Come for the bread, stay for the politics. I'm Ben Walsh, and this is Let Me Eat Bread. I have two very special announcements for you before we start making our potato bread. First, we will no longer be doing live episodes where I make the bread alongside you. This is because it takes a lot of time out of my life to do that, and honestly, there hasn't been a ton of engagement with the live session, so we will still keep our Saturday at noon time for broadcasting, but all episodes from now on, unless I specifically say so, will be pre-recorded. I will still be in the chat, and looking at all the comments. So if you want to do that, you can certainly do that, and I will make sure to get back to every person. And we still look forward to seeing your loaf of bread every week. Second announcement is, although we would normally have a normal show today, being Saturday, I actually have a special surprise guest for you, who I will introduce a little later. All right, everybody, now let's get started.
Hello again, everyone. I'm adding half an ounce of yeast and an ounce and a quarter of sugar to 4 ounces of warm water, 72 degrees. And now I'm taking my 2 eggs and adding them to my 10 ounces of room temperature milk, just giving that a quick stir around. We're leaving the yeast to set for a second. Now I'm adding my 4 ounces of bread flour and my pound and a half of all-purpose flour and just a little bit of salt. I like to be generous. Just put that down for a second and give that a quick stir before we combine our liquid ingredients. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our milk and egg mixture in and give that a quick stir around. And once we do that, we are going to put in our yeast mixture, just making sure to get all the sugar out of it, since that's the only sugar we get in this recipe. Alright, now that we've done that and given that just a quick little stir, it's time to add our potatoes. So just in one moment, I'm going to add our 12 ounces of baked and chopped potatoes. Now these are chopped into 1-inch quarters, so in go the potatoes. And next we're going to put in our 4 ounces of melted butter, or a whole stick. Also, that dog in the corner is not mine. He's just visiting. Alright, so we're going to keep mixing this around until we get to a nice dough, a nice kind of soft dough. And once we do that, we're going to turn it out onto our board. So I'm putting some flour down to make sure that I don't have a sticky surface, and we'll get to kneading. So you're going to see that, and it's going to become very apparent very quickly, that although I'm kneading slowly at first, I'm going to really speed up my kneading. Part of that is the work of camera and speeding up the film. But this dough actually absorbs a ton of flour. So it says to knead for 8 minutes, but truthfully, I was kneading for much longer than that. Hence the reason I've sped up this footage so much. Usually I wouldn't have to speed it up this much, but truthfully speaking, it was just too much. And it got to the point where I was just adding more and more and more flour. At the end of the day, what we really want is to get this dough to about 80 degrees, but it also needs to not stick when we're kneading it. So just make sure that you've got it at a good consistency. I've checked my temperature there, and clearly it's not high enough, but you want it to feel good, you want it to be thoroughly kneaded, and you want to be able to make sure you're not losing pieces of potato as you go through this process. So I'm about to finish up, just adding one little tiny bit more piece of flour, a little bit of flour there, and it is finally time to move on to the next step of our bread.
All right, so our bread is ready to be risen. So what we're going to do now, and we know that because it read 80 degrees internally. If you don't have a thermometer, don't worry about this. You are definitely going to be able to use one of the other two tests that we typically use, either the poke test or the window pane test. So don't worry about that if you don't have a thermometer. Just as it gets to 80 or between 80 and 90, that's going to be just fine. So this is just 80 degrees, but it will rise beautifully. The house is warm right now, so no need to worry there. The next thing we have to do is oil a bowl and make sure that our dough is prepped for rising. Then I have a great guest for you. I'll be right back. Now we're just going to use a teaspoon of oil here, even less, just enough to cover your dough and to make your bowl non-stick. So I'm just going to take my hand here. You can use a paintbrush if you like, or a cloth or some other tool, but I prefer to use this. And we're just going to make this nice and stick proof here. And then we're going to take our dough, put it in a ball using the traditional method that we always use. And then we're going to Plop it in, turn it around, and cover it up. All right, set your timers for an hour. And if you're not staying for the politics portion, I will see you on 1 hour. But if you are staying for the politics portion, we have a great guest to introduce you to, and I will bring him in just one moment. All right, so that is our hour. We are going to take our bread and start the shaping of it, and we're going to see if it's risen. Let's take a look here. Big reveal. Oh, wow. Okay, so this bread is really grown. That's awesome. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a little bit of flour here, and we are going to just put a little bit of flour on here, and we're going to start to shape our bread.
Now this process involves churning out our bread onto our work surface and shaping it quickly back into a ball from its risen form, making sure not to knock out all of the air, but we're going to have to weigh it. It weighs about 64 ounces, so I'm going to try my luck at cutting it in half and seeing if I can get exactly 32 on each one. And moment of truth, 32 exactly. Look at me go. Alright, so now we're going to shape these and let them sit for 10 minutes at room temperature. Don't mind the fact that I could not totally get out of frame for this particular portion of the video. I'm supposed to be out of frame here. Ben, step out. Ben, step out of the frame. Ben, step out of the frame. Anyway, I'm back, and we have our two loaves that are proofed. We have let them sit for 10 minutes and smushed each one of them down, putting each of them on a baking sheet. Now what we're going to do with them is we're going to cover them and let them sit for another hour. Once that's done, we're going to sprinkle some all-purpose flour on them and cook them at 400 degrees Fahrenheit each for 35 to 45 minutes, just making sure that it sounds hollow when tapped, and it also has an internal of 205. Alright guys, I will see you next week. Bye now.